Hello, thanks for tuning in. Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist here. Richard Dawkins was interviewed about a month ago on LBC. Rachel Johnson is in the chair. So let's have a listen to what Dawkins says in response to questions about Christianity versus Islam in the UK.
Dawkins, it's very good to have you join us to discuss whether it matters that Christianity is playing a diminishing role in national life. Welcome to LBC.
Thank you.
And what would be your Easter message? I've said a few things. What would you tell the nation?
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian.
That's a bit bizarre, really, because if you think back to Soviet times, do you think the average Soviet citizen who was, being crushed by all the oppression and lack of freedom of speech, etc., do you think those who were opposed to the ethos of the communist regime would call themselves cultural communists? I think probably not.
Ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more, are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
Yes, I do, really. I have to choose my words carefully. If I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. It seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion, in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins. Why is Islam fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, the way women are treated. Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things. But there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who, of course, are quite different. But the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran.
Well, they're not all quite different, as we know from some of the horrific honor killings and various other outrages which have happened against women, both in this country, overseas, cup of acid thrown in the face for disrespecting the family, or talking to a man that she didn't know, that kind of thing.
Fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays, and I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith.
Just for balance, should we say something about fundamentalist Christians who, we can see abortion rights, reproductive rights being rolled back in Republican states in America. So Christianity is still not without its problems when it comes to women and their rights.
Well, you didn't ask me about Christianity in America. That's a different matter entirely.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure we got some fundamentalist Christians here too, but not as public.
Well, insofar as fundamentalist Christians oppose evolution and think that the world was created 6,000 years ago, that is pernicious nonsense, of course.
Right. Well, so I think I see where you come from. I like the phrase, you're a cultural Christian. I think I'm a bit more than a cultural Christian, although, it does, my belief waxes and wanes. Would it be a good thing or a bad thing if we became a less Christian country? And just on the the foundation of this nation, with the king being the head of church and state. Do you think it provides a solid foundation we would lose something if, let's say, there was a Muslim majority?
Well, yes. I think the king, when he was Prince of Wales, was actually rather sympathetic towards Islam, and one of the problems I felt. No, I think it would be a terrible thing. And insofar as Christianity can be seen as a bulwark against Islam, I think it's a very good thing. I mean, in Africa, for example, where you have missionaries of both faiths operating, I'm on Team Christian side as far as that's concerned.
It's interesting because I sort of thought that you would be more of a Hitchinite, God is not great advocate. But it's interesting to me that you see the value and the force for good of the United Kingdom.
No, he's bolstering Christianity, possibly, as some have argued, because atheism, the new atheists have failed miserably to prevent the march of Islam, the expansion of Islam in Europe. And so he's now desperately bolstering Christianity as a counter to the Islamic threat. I think that's what probably is going on. He's even now calling himself a cultural Christian.
Kingdom having a Christian foundation.
Yes, but I must emphasize that I think that the things that Christians believe are actually nonsense. I mean, I think that when you say you waver, I wanted to ask you, do you actually believe that Jesus had a virgin for a mother? Do you actually believe he rose from the dead? I suspect
well, weirdly,
you probably don't.
Since you ask, Richard, if I may, because I was at New College when I think, are you still a Don at New College? Yes.
Well, I'm retired.
You're retired,
yes,
but you don't look anyway.
Come on, get on with it and say what you believe.
Weirdly, I was just 3 weeks ago at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, where the Christians believe that Christ was crucified, or there was the tomb, and the Gethsemane was just there, and Golgotha was there. And I have to admit that there is a real force. I mean, it feels like the fulcrum of three world religions. It really does. And Christianity is palpable there. The place pulses with Christianity. I don't know whether it made me believe the Bible anymore, but I certainly felt that Jesus was a historical figure. Yes, I did believe that.
Well,
am I wrong to think that?
No. I mean, that's quite different. But do you believe that his mother was a virgin?
Well, I mean, maybe that was a mistranslation of. Well, that's biologically impossible, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yes.
Well, I mean, I used to make a joke that most second children are virgin births because you can. Anyway, we don't want to go into that. Yes. But yes, you know what I'm saying. Were you pleased that Rishi Sunak talked about Christian values in his...
She dodged that, didn't she? She moved on from denying that the Christian fundamentals are true. Clearly, she doesn't believe in the virgin birth. She said it's biologically impossible. And of course, it's also biologically impossible to rise from the dead.
He said Christian values are British values in his Easter message. You seem to be on the same page.
Yes, I didn't hear that, but
that's what he said.
Yes, I suppose so. But I don't.
Yeah, just briefly, apostate prophet. I watched a video. There was somebody with an atheist channel. I can't remember who he is, but he highlighted that apostate prophet had been to Jerusalem. He'd stood in the same spot as she'd stood, and he'd made a film of himself saying, "Okay, I'm an atheist, but wow, I'm here, and I can kind of, I can feel the, resonance of all these." All these religions coming together, and I actually thought he was going to convert on the spot to Christianity or one of the religions. And it's quite possible that when you're there, because of all the history, you do have these feelings, but that's just emotion. When you actually start thinking and asking the questions, can anybody rise from the dead? Can there be a virgin birth? The answer has to be no.
Not to be misunderstood. I mean, I do think it's nonsense, but the Christian belief. Today is Easter, and of course I don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and I don't believe you do either. Do you?
Do I believe that Jesus rose from the dead? I mean, you're really
Ah,
putting
yeah. Well, he came back to this because she dodged it earlier.
me on the spot. I would like to believe he did. Yes, I
Yeah, well,
mentioned
that's not the same as believing. Liking to believe is not the same as believing. And the reason that she would like to believe but she doesn't believe is because the evidence isn't there. And as she said, it's biologically impossible. It would be nice if it's true, but it doesn't look as if it is.
the
That's different.
resurrection. I mentioned the resurrection. By the way, just quickly, because I've been told we've got to stop. When my son was 2, we took him to church, and the priest said, "You can ask me anything." And he said that my 2-year-old son asked the priest, "Do you know Jesus to be true, or do you believe Jesus to be true?" And do you see what I mean? And he couldn't answer that question himself.
Okay, so a 2-year-old boy is asking this question, which sounds like it doesn't sound like a question that come from a 2-year-old. I mean, I remember, well, I've known toddlers, and they don't really ask these questions. They're not capable of that kind of abstract thought. I don't believe the story. I don't know where she got it from, whether she's inventing it or she's heard it from somewhere, or I don't know. I just don't believe the story that a 2-year-old is capable of asking that question. And also, any priest worth his salt would give an answer. Do you believe or do you know? He would either say, yes, I believe it, it's a matter of faith, or I've had a personal experience and I know it. There's no big deal. I don't believe the story.
Himself. Anyway,
Yes.
or God. Anyway, listen, lastly, just one thing. Does it matter? I'm going to ask you again, if Christianity is a minority religion in this country.
I think it matters from a cultural point of view.
That's a very clear answer from you, Richard Dawkins. Thank you so much for joining us from, I look like New College, but Richard Dawkins, Prof. Dawkins is...
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, the main thing that came of interest to me there was Dawkins saying that he's a cultural Christian. And I think that he must really feel the threat of Islam, which a lot of people do because it's spreading in Europe, it's spreading in the world, to the extent he's prepared to back up Christianity just as a counter, partly because of the miserable failure of new atheism, of which he was more or less heading the movement. So yeah, interesting interview. Hope you enjoyed my take on it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.